Hi, my name is Chris Brown with ClosePoint USA. And today we've assembled some of the best professionals in real estate from very different backgrounds. We have here with us Joe Coiro, who's a longtime attorney, probably close to 40 years of practice, and also an incredible litigator as well. We have Tom Wolff, over 20 years of lending experience with the Loan Factory, and currently one of the most sought after loan officers in the area that give incredible advice and insight to the loan programs that are available today. And of course, we have Ines Cruz, my longtime friend that I've worked with for over 25 years. She's an amazing realtor, somebody who gives incredible insight to what's happening locally and also internationally, because she just got back from Chile. So we're excited to have these guys with us today to talk about what you're going to be experiencing and what they see happening in 2026. How you guys doing?
Great, Chris. How are you?
Very good.
Great.
Very good. Great.
Thank you for joining us. So I'll start with you, Tom. 2026, it's a lot of changes going on, and there's a lot of ups and downs with interest rates or different programs. President Trump has talked about bringing out different programs that help people make their loan maybe portable to another house that they're looking to buy. What do you see happening in 2026? With all this different information coming after us, what are you focusing yourself on?
So far over the past few months, we've seen a great improvement. Think about it. I remember just 2 years ago, we were all surprised to see interest rates spiking and hitting the 8% range. And now we're very comfortable. We're finding interest rates in the 5s and 6s right now. There's a lot more programs that are available to help people purchase homes. New Jersey has a great grant program where they offer down payment assistance at a very affordable interest rate. There are non-QM programs for people who may be self-employed that would not qualify for a traditional loan to help them get into housing. And with the rates right now being in the 5s and 6s, we're finding it an amazing time to purchase a home.
So are you seeing the interest rate sliding down? Do you think they're going to continue to slide down? Or do you think there's going to be a spike because of the Japanese market and what they're doing?
So I don't really think that we're going to spike back up. We are going to see a little bit lower, I believe, this year in interest rates. I don't think that we're going to hit the 2s and 3s again.
Okay.
But there is a good possibility that we could be back in the high 4s and low 5s sometime this year, I believe.
That's awesome. That's all, and that opens up a lot of doors. For
It truly
first-time
does.
buyers to make it more affordable for them to come in.
Well, that's one of the reasons I believe that we've had such a difficult time with the housing market. You have a lot of people, they got these interest rates at 2 or 3% that don't want to give them up, and they don't want to put their houses on the market for obvious reasons.
So what do you think the trigger point for these people with the 2 and 3% is? Like, what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to move out. I'm going to go forward.
So you actually have a lot of different things. One, life changes. Okay. Eventually, we have to move on, and we have to make changes in our lives. It's unavoidable. But I think that if the interest rates go back into the 4s and 5s again and remain steady, I think that'll bring a lot of people out.
That'll trigger those older couples,
Correct.
like myself, who does have a 2.5% rate to move on.
Chris, you're not the only one. We're all in this. I'm in my 50s now. I've had my house forever, and I've actually considered possibly downgrading, but have not yet because of that same reason. But again, when the interest rates go down a little bit more, then that's something even I'll be looking at doing.
So Ines, you as a realtor, you have interest rates that are coming down, as Tom said. They're relaxing, let's say. But the affordability aspect, is the prices relaxing? Are they coming down, or are you seeing an increase in prices?
It depends on the area. Okay, it's very local, but I have seen an increase on calls and activity on my business. The areas that I work on, and they are, like Tom said, great programs. I just closed 2 clients, and they got $17,000. Okay. So they walk the closing with money.
So with the grant, the $17,000
with the grant,
yep.
They were able to get the grant, and which makes it so much easier for them. They do have to stay in the home, but there are people that are planning to stay in the home. Okay. Now the activity is good, so I'm very positive of what this year will be bringing. more clients, and it's also the way you treat the client, and you have to explain.
Right.
You got to give them the whole scenario, what to expect, so they know what's going to happen at every step of the transaction. So if you teach them ahead what's coming, there's always negotiations, there's always, now with the buyer's compensation changes, you have to explain, and that opens doors.
So would you say that without the grants in those transactions, would those clients been able to purchase that home?
Very tight.
Very tight.
Very tight, and I'm very tight, close to my clients, and if I don't think that they can afford it, and I will tell them, I don't think this is the house for you. I don't want you to
you.
be, I'd rather wait and let's find something more affordable. But when I see the different clients, I act on it. Like I tell them not, or your family is like growing and you're going to be too tight, or you're buying too much of a house. I tell them, I try to guide them, and I tell them, it's your final decision. You're the decision maker, but I'll just give you the whole scenario. This is what's going to happen now. This is what's going to happen next. And then this is after the closing.
You give them all the steps.
Yeah, that way they can make a decision, an informed decision. It's very important. I give them the market values and things so they can make their offer.
Excellent. Joe, so you've been doing this for a long time as an attorney representing buyers and sellers. What are you seeing different coming into 26 that may not been the normal course of business over the last 39 years?
Well, I'm in my 41st year, which is incredible to me.
Me too. Especially I used to work with you.
You and I have known each other
I used
for
to
a
work
very
for
long
Joe.
time.
Wow.
When I was a kid, yeah.
Nice.
We hired Chris essentially out of college, and he cut his teeth with us, and he's come all this way, and it's wonderful to see. The market, I think it's a good question. What I've learned is the market is essentially, when I say the market, not only the real estate market, all markets, whether it's stock market, any other market, is essentially, at least in part, emotion driven.
Yes.
So, and it's affected by groupthink. If everybody thinks it's okay to put their toe in the water, all of a sudden everybody's, like the movie Jaws, if anybody remember, it took the first person to get in the water, then everybody goes in. I know the average person watches what the Fed does carefully or closely, or they think they should be. But obviously we know that when the Fed cuts rates, raises rates, leaves them alone, it's the federal funds rate. What most people don't understand, the average person, is that has nothing to do with mortgages.
Right.
It's the rate banks charge each other to park their money
It's perception,
overnight.
if anything. Like you said, emotional perception. As to, there's a
and
drop
that's
in
my
this,
point. My point is that when I say emotion, it's emotion slash perception. Mortgages are really tied into treasury bonds, and those move very little. Or when they do, those should dictate what happens to mortgages, and in fact do. But the average person doesn't know that, doesn't perceive that, doesn't think that. So when the Fed cuts rates, even a tiny bit, 25 basis points, a couple of times in a row, all of a sudden, hey, maybe I could put my toe in the water, and I can
emotional perception.
And it's perception and it's emotion driven. I find, and excellent questions before, I find that a lot of buyers, especially first-time buyers, are in a really tough position. I have, as you know, I have children. They're all around 30 years of age. I have a daughter who's married, I have a daughter who's getting married, and a son who's married. And my oldest daughter, she and her husband have very great jobs, excellent jobs. But again, looking for a house, not only are the prices high, as you've said, but the interest rates aren't great either. We were used to, as has been said here, the nice 2.75, 3% interest rates for a long time.
Yeah.
3.25%.
Which is in the spectrum of all interest rates.
It never happened.
Never happened.
It was one.
It's a blip on the radar
Yeah.
that we
was
got
COVID.
lucky being around,
That's
and as an
exactly right.
homeowner.
I mean, on average, it's 6-7 has been the
Right.
has been
You're
the average
correct.
over time.
My
So-
first house, 7.75.
Listen, my uncle
Yeah.
tells me all the time 18% back in the 80s.
Yes,
so
yeah.
we don't even want to go
That's
there.
a book
but
too, though.
show
In the
you-
other
To
direction.
show you how old I am, unfortunately, the house that I live in now, as you know, up in Hunterdon County, I bought in 1992, January of 92, and we were thrilled to get 9.25%.
Yeah.
Thrilled, because everything was hovering around 10% at the time. So we had to pay even some points, and it was down at 9.25. And then, of course, when we refinanced a couple of times, and it beat down to around 3. And so what happens? Again, perception. Right? The sellers get spoiled because when interest rates are low, it keeps prices even artificially high.
Right.
You know, even when they shouldn't be high, they are, because inventory's down and the interest rates are low, so everything's good. What I've seen is when there's a transition period, like I think we're going into now.
Okay.
And I believe that the economy is going to roar. I do. I'm an optimist in that sense. I like what's going on in Washington. Praise God. So I think we're moving in the right direction economically. But that always lags, unfortunately. Always. Because again, it's the perception. And we talked about some great comments here about what's happening. People like me, if you still have a mortgage, you don't want to give up that 2.8% mortgage, to even if you're downsizing, because you want to take on a loan that's 6%. It's anathema, especially if you haven't known it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go anywhere near that. So that's one of the things. Sellers too become stubborn, and I'm sure you see it all the time. Yeah. Now, and I realize, and this, I've worked with realtors for 41 years, to get the listing, you have to do what you have to do. But then you have to also bring the people down to reality a little bit, because they're looking, they want this much. The buyers, of course, are coming from a different place. And a lot of buyers feel like, yes, I had to bid the list price or above the list price to get this, but now I'm going to raise everything during inspections. And the sellers are very stubborn. There's a lot of, I have a seller, I'm not going to name him, of course. We just canceled the third contract in about 6 months. And he gets to, right at the end of inspections and serious negotiation, and this is in Bridgewater, an $800,000 townhouse, so it's not something that's not a ditzy little property. But he's very unrealistic as a seller. And he's been through 3 realtors on the 3 deals.
Oh, jeez.
Because, he knows better. And it gets down, there's mold. There's mold in his unit. And doesn't matter. Doesn't matter it's mold. They're saying it's mold. I don't think there's mold. So there's a test result, there's mold. So you come up with those sellers once in a while and you say, and you know what I've always said, and unfortunately as a realtor you can't do this, but as an attorney I can. If I get somebody that's being very unrealistic that way, the only way to tame them a little bit is to build them every time they cancel something.
Yeah.
Is to say, listen, we worked on this for 2.5 months, for all these hours. You know, you're not going to pay me $5,000, but you're going to pay me something. And some people just don't care. But, that's just an isolated...
So he's gone through 3 contracts with you.
3 contracts in about 6.5, 7 months. And good buyers, approved, everything's... And not unrealistic. They're not raising crazy things during inspections. So you say... I remember the phone calls with the guy. And I've been in business, like I said, 41 years, so I know how to talk to clients. And saying... I'm beginning to think you really don't want to sell this unit. Maybe that's what it's
a great way to put it.
Yeah, what attachment does he have to that home?
Well, and what's funny is he's been there probably for about 16, 17 years, and he was divorced a long time. Now he's got a relatively new spouse, 2-3 years, but he runs the show.
Yeah.
He knows everything. That guy said this, but he means that. And you know what it is. Sometimes you just have people, you can't make them happy. And don't you want to sell your house? Or is this fun for you? Are you enjoying this?
It's so funny you bring that up, because I have an uncle that had a house in East Brunswick, and they held on to it forever. And so stubborn. and my aunt called me up and says, we're finally ready to sell. Okay. I said, I need to hear it from Uncle Rich because he's so stubborn.
He's the impediment.
Oh, he's incomplete. He did want to sell. So we finally put on a contract. We used somebody from Coldwell Banker. And it was interesting because during the course of the transaction, just like your client, my Uncle Rich started raising, like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. No. I finally got him on the phone, just like you asked. I said, Uncle Rich, do you want to sell this house or not? Stop wasting everybody's time, just making people miserable.
If you
Be
don't,
reasonable.
it's okay. But
If you don't, it's okay.
But you got to say
don't
something.
put people through the ringer to go do all this work and expect them to be happy with you. Be honest. You're right. The emotional attachment, and like you had said,
Yeah, there's got to be something.
It's
there.
it can be,
I don't know what it is. Sometimes you can't figure it out, and I'm not sure at this point, and maybe I shouldn't say this, that I care what it is. But one way or another, I just,
you want to know how to go.
Either you're in
what
or you're
direction?
out.
Yeah, what direction are you putting me in?
Right.
Am I protecting you from selling, or am I looking to facilitate the deal? That's the two choices.
And that is the truth. And buyers, buyers have their own baggage that they bring to a transaction, but younger buyers have different things that they're looking at, and I notice it all depends where they're coming from. Right. It really does. But it's a tough market for buyers, and as it begins to shift, it's going to become a little tougher market for the sellers who are unrealistic. Their feet are etched in stone. Yep. They don't want to move.
They think they got gold.
Well, and you know what? There's a saying, and you probably remember. I used to say it quite a bit about certain transactions and certain buyers and sellers, saying certain people
just don't mix.
Are selling, and if it's a seller, they're selling gold, and they're buying lead when they go. So that's how they look at it, or vice versa. If they're buyers that are unrealistic, they're buying lead, but whatever they have is gold. That's. Excuse the French, that's crap over there. So, I'm not going to overpay for that. Or, as I said, the psyche
But they want them to overpay for their gold.
The psyche is with a lot of buyers, too, that if I've paid full price or if I've shot over the listing price, now I'm entitled to a reward for that. Now I got to get mine. So, and they're unrealistic a lot of times.
You're right. And Tom...
It just reminds me of a situation I dealt with probably 10 years ago. I had a seller in Philadelphia that wanted to buy another house.
Okay.
Now, her issue was the crime. She said there was literally gunfights in the backyard of her house. When I went into the house to meet her, because she was elderly, couldn't move around very much, every door inside the house was a steel door. You don't see that too often. I mean, she spent the money to make sure this house was secure. After 7 months of this realtor working with her, they finally found a buyer that was willing to buy the house. Buyer asked for a seller concession. She says, absolutely not. If you can't come up with the money, you don't deserve a house. The funny thing is, when I pre-approved her, we knew she wasn't going to walk away with any money, and it was with a seller concession. I'm like, how can you ask for a seller concession?
Right.
But you're going to sit there and put the buyer down for asking for the same thing.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So trust me, when you say that story, I see it all the time. The expectations are
sure
really
you do.
Unrealistic in some cases.
That's a good way to put it, too. And in fact, for many years, I've always trained my staff and people in the office, listen, when you answer the phone, when you answer an email, our job overall, whether it's my job, your job, or your job and theirs, we are managers of expectation. Okay? And I've spent probably the last 15 years doing a lot of, because I was always invited, Weichert Realtors doing their lunch and learn and their different teaching classes to the realtors. And I always said to realtors, you have to make sure your number one job is to be an expert manager of expectations, especially when it comes to inspection issues.
It's the hardest thing to do.
What I always tell realtors, I said, look, here's the one thing that you don't want to do. And I overuse analogies. I learned this from my father years ago, but I called it getting in the hot tub. And I'll explain. What I would say to realtors is the last thing you want to do is get in the hot tub with your clients. What does that mean? It means if you're doing an inspection, even if things aren't wonderful, don't pile on. Oh, this is terrible, this is crazy, we're going to get $20,000. guess what? Because I always say to realtors, once you get in that hot tub, you're trapped. You can't get back out. You can't walk back. That expectation. So what should you do? Well, I think it behooves everyone to say, hey, listen, yeah, I know this seems bad, but this is an easy fix. We can get blah, 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 or we can do. A can-do attitude always works best, especially with buyers as well as with sellers, when you're dealing with something like. But the minute you pile on, you can't. You've created an unrealistic
You're throwing
expectation.
gas on the fire.
But you destroy your credibility.
Right, and if it doesn't come out
way.
that way, and you over, promise.
And what happens if you told the client, "Hey, we can get
We can get-
10,000 for this," and you get a $7,500 offer? Now the client's looking to you. Hey, you told me 10, so are you going to make up the difference?
It's true. It's true. Tom, I'm going to change gears a little bit. Qualifying somebody in 2026 or 2025, is it harder? Because I'm seeing in my closings a lot of people paying off credit card debt when they're buying, which I've never seen so much. I've seen it in refinances and stuff like that.
To bring down the ratios, I guess.
We do that all the time. And here's a couple problems that we're seeing and that are constantly brought up to my attention all the time. First of all, the cost of doing loans is now astronomical. It used to cost us, when I first started in the business, $8 to run a credit report. This year, we are now up to $124. It's almost doubling year after year after. And we get it for a discount, believe it or not. There are lenders out there that are paying $160, $170
I see
for a credit report. So now what we're running into a problem is that there's a lot of lenders out there that won't require a credit report. They want to do a soft pull because it's a cheaper avenue for them to. Let's be honest. If I have 100 clients calling me for a pre-approval, maybe 3 or 4 of them will go through and buy a house. So that's a lot of expense on a lender's side to keep paying for these credit reports.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really
So, myself, we keep everything at a discount, but that's because we have the clients pay up front for a full credit report. And I explain to them, I'm like a doctor. You would not go to a doctor that you just come up to, give a little bit of information and say, okay, cure me. You want a doctor that's actually going to go in, investigate what your symptoms are, do tests, and figure out what the right solution is. There is no easy way. This is the biggest transaction that the average American can make is buying a house, but they all want to take shortcuts on it. So, I can't speak for everybody, but I know
That's a really good point that he just made, by the way.
Is that not crazy?
Because I see it a lot in South Jersey. Because they don't hire attorneys.
That's another issue.
And we have to deal with the
You have to-
inspection
because now
negotiation.
Now you're hurdling that line
Yeah.
of being a realtor and not going over to unlawful practice of law.
Right.
I recommend everybody has an attorney. I'm going to tell you, I buy a lot of real estate. I've never closed a deal without an attorney. Never closed a deal.
I agree
and I've
with
done
you,
this for
obviously.
27 years. Closed over 50,000. I won't do it. You're right though. What is the saying? You're a penny wise, a pound foolish.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Well,
what
most
this is.
people are. Isn't
Yeah.
it funny? Most
Yeah.
people are.
I just sit there and I see things happening at a closing table. Just had one recently where use and occupancy was needed, and it needed to be done right away. Nobody can do it.
Well, we see
No
that.
attorneys. So
We have clients that don't want to produce tax returns, bank records, or
That's
anything.
another part.
They're like, oh, well, this other lender didn't ask me for this. My bank didn't ask me for this. It just issued me a pre-approval. Again, you're using the wrong person. If you're afraid to give over that information on this important transaction, you're not ready to
you're
be
not
a
ready to
buyer.
rock and roll. Yeah.
You've made a mistake, and I gladly turn people away for that. You're not my client.
Right.
My clients, I can count on one hand in 20 years and still have fingers left over how many clients that I was not able to close that I pre-approved. And that's because we take the extra time and the extra steps to make sure
says a lot.
that they're well vetted. And it makes my business, honestly, I don't advertise. It's all referrals. And that's what you get when you give quality work, is you're able to get the referral business.
I have to say that you are all on social media pretty active though. I see
No, I
you
do my
often.
own stuff.
Yeah, I
But
see that.
I don't pay for.
No, good stuff. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
I try to keep it up a little bit, but I really don't market. I'm not paying for advertising in newspapers and
Right.
stuff like that. It's not me.
No. You've already created your sphere though.
Exactly.
20
I
years,
mean-
probably plus.
Yes.
You're doing your thing just like me. I mean, I'm not running around so heavily. I'm maintaining my clients. That's
Yeah.
my big focus now
Excellent
in my
point.
life. Now, if someone new comes into my company, they're building that breadbasket. You know, it's a different running around than I do. But 26 Ines. Big year, bad year, middle, slack tide, no.
Big year.
Big year.
Full throttle ahead.
Both other.
Yeah, I'm going to be working and I'm going to be helping and serving my clients, whatever they are, sellers, buyers, landlords, tenants. I'm going to keep working and I love what I do.
Are you seeing a confidence in your buyers? Like,
A
are
little
they
bit
like
more.
feeling good about themselves and their economy and
They,
consumer confidence is basically.
yeah, a little bit better than last year.
Okay, good.
With the interest rate going down a little, I think that they're getting their feet wet. And
But
like,
they feel good about their job situation. They feel good about
yeah,
their
the
future.
economy.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Tom, seeing the same thing?
I think it's going to be a fantastic year for people to get that opportunity to move into a home.
Who are the people that need to do the most? Like, has the greatest amount of opportunity in this year? Like, what investors, flippers? You know, what are you saying?
So I actually think that market's going to change as well. I think that this is going to be more of a year for your first-time home buyer. I think that with the interest rates
That's
coming
great
down
news.
and the federal government clamping down on the corporations buying out all these houses, that we're going to see that these people now, listen, I can tell you 4 years now, I've never had a shortage of people wanting to buy a house or the ability to buy a house. It's always been fighting cash buyers
Yeah.
or corporations that are buying these houses and turning around and renting them. So with that now not being part of the big picture, it's going to give a lot more people opportunity to become homeowners and experience that real American dream.
That's awesome. Joe?
I tend to agree with that. I'm a big optimist as far as that goes. And as I said before, there's always a little lag. So you're right. There's a little lag when something's about to happen. But I think all the pieces of the puzzle are going into place. And I always see this kind of a situation as a slingshot. Right now we're in the pullback mode very slightly. But when it goes forward, I agree. I think it's going to be a banner year. When is that going to start? I don't know. You and I were discussing before too about how the weather,
Oh, the weather's.
the weather kills the real estate market, whether you like it or not, because there's a
More powerful than interest rates. More,
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, more powerful inflation.
There's a certain
Nobody
amount-
wants to go to see a house when there's 13 inches of frozen snow.
It's not just
20
that though. It's also, keep in mind, repairs.
That's right.
I've literally.
They want to see what the result is after
we
it melts.
we locked a loan that was supposed to close over a month ago that we have not been able to close because of all the snow because it requires a septic repair.
Oh, wow.
And nobody can.
can't
So
dig.
Good
here,
point.
here, the rates expiring, and you know.
What
And
do you do?
in this case, as a broker, I'm able to move them from one to another and to restructure the deal in the client's benefit. So they're covered. They're good.
That's pretty cool.
I,
That you're
my
able to
average
do
clear
that.
to close is honestly 2 weeks. They've already were clear to close with the last lender. It's not a big deal. We'll get it done. But it does, again, it's those
Well, it is a big
expectations.
deal. I mean, they didn't have somebody like you who can then
Yeah.
jockey to them into a position to be able to close because this is not going away anytime soon.
No,
and what
no,
I'm pointing
it's-
at is
it's-
freaking snow.
Yeah,
I mean,
well-
this is like terrible out here.
That's,
It does make a huge difference, but you're right. Weather definitely, and believe it or not, thinking about this year, that was the one thing I never considered as being an obstacle was the weather.
Yeah, and we've been pretty lucky. up
We've
until
been
this
very
point.
fortunate up until.
But I've always said, though, early in my career, there's no more destructive force to the real estate industry than the weather. I can tell you that right now. It is. I've seen it come and go. I've been through the financial meltdown, and still the weather rules.
Yep.
It just
does
is
rule.
what it is.
there's a contingent of people who are not going to shop for real estate when the weather's bad.
They don't want to
Period.
get out of their house.
Doesn't matter.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, doesn't matter. And that was what you just said was an even better point. If you, and you know, I deal in Hunterdon County a lot, well and septic.
Yes.
You have a well and septic, there's nobody that's
Yep.
going to be shopping now
Yeah.
because, hey, we need to make sure that stuff is okay and we can't test it perfectly.
Right.
Or there's something that is perceptual There's something that's psychological about when all the snow is gone and the ice is gone.
Yeah.
I see the
That
house, I
pent up
see the
demand.
property.
Oh my God, it's going to be insane. So this could fall in line with the snow and the weather right now, to our prediction of that rubber band, like when it comes back together
Yeah.
and the snow is
gonna
gone. You got beautiful weather. You got a lower interest rate. All the stars
factors, yeah.
are all on the line.
And I
Okay,
think
but
this
great
year,
things.
I really think this year with all the pieces going into place, I think it's better than a rubber band. I think it's what I said a moment, it's a slingshot.
Yeah, it could
And
be.
it's just a question of when.
Yep.
But when it does, then everybody's going to race to it. Like I said, the group think, and then a lot of people are going to say, oh boy.
But then we'll all be back here and be like, holy cow, how hard was that? You know, when am I going to get a break? Forgetting what we've already gone through.
Well, I said, I've been in business long enough that I remember the meltdown, and you've worked at our office, and Chris knows. I'm talking about mid-'90s, late 90s, very early 2000s. We would take in, and we're a tiny law firm, we would take in 130, 140 deals a month.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
For our
Right.
size, it was
Yeah.
yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Incredible. So you're sitting there and you're watching all this stuff happen, and then I remember the 2008, 2009 meltdown happened, and we went, in my office, from almost 20 people down to 2 or 3 because the bottom came out.
It was terrible.
And I remember back in those early days, we used to get contracts over the fax before the internet. So, and I remember if I would go meet with a client downstairs, come upstairs, there'd be 2 contracts on the fax, and I'd be, oh my God, like, just give it a rest for a minute. And then 2008, 2009 hit.
And now you're wishing.
And it devastated most people. And I, God, please, make the fax work again. I promise I'll never complain again.
You're praying to the fax god. That's too funny.
I was only kidding.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Now, for the younger people watching, maybe you should say what a fax actually is.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna date myself even more. When we opened our law firm, I graduated in '85. We opened our law firm in '87 in Somerset, and I would say at that time about 85 to 90% of offices did not have a fax. I remember doing attorney review and saying to somebody on the phone, yeah, I mailed that yesterday. You should have it by tomorrow. That's how attorney review was done. Can you imagine in the instantaneous world we live in now? And then I remember one of the title companies that we worked with back then, I won't name them, but it was a long time ago, and they said, listen, you know, if you get a fax, we need to boom, 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 like, you know, communicate instantly. And that's, we got a fax. It was like late 1987. And all of a sudden we were styling. And all the paper would fall off as they printed out the
I
page
remember.
and curl up. And then you had to sort out the pages.
I remember.
And that's how old I am. And then, of course, we went from the fax, and then everybody had a fax. And then slowly everybody started to get email. When in the 90s, internet came in. And that was, it's a whole nother, and of course, the internet being so instantaneous now, it's inconceivable to most people. I talk to my kids, they're like, what do you mean you didn't have a cell phone? Like, we didn't have a cell phone. And we went out, and this saved my life because I come from a very European, my parents were off the boat, very strict European household. My mother, you go there, you go find the payphone, you call this. God forbid I had a cell phone. My parents would have killed me if they knew half the places I wound up.
You'd be able to track it.
It saved me, but to my kids it was inconceivable. Like, you know, you just can't go. No, you couldn't do any of that.
So-
You had to find the phone.
So speaking about kids, and before we wrap up, what is and I'm going to start with you, Ines. What is the number one piece of advice are you giving to first-time home buyers? These people that are coming in, what is the one golden nugget that you would pass on to your first-time home buyer?
Be patient and trust the process.
Okay.
And when you explain from the beginning the steps that you're going to go through, and sometimes I tell them, prepare for a bumpy ride on a plane.
Okay.
And this is going to happen. You may put an offer, it may not be accepted. So that's not the home for you. Keep on going. And if it is, maybe they'll call us and they take your offer. and it happened. So my thing is to teach them the process. That way there's no big surprises.
Perfect.
And I tell them the home inspection, each house will have something. It's just a matter of what is acceptable and what is not. There are certain things, and I tell them that I will not budge, meaning underground oil tanks, meaning a roof that is leaking and the seller is not budging about the repair. It's like those, if you don't have the money to fix it yourself later on as a buyer, you can't buy this house because I don't want you to be in a property that is not going to, home that is not going to make
So
you
being
happy.
patient and resilient is
Yes,
your-
resilience, yeah, and teach them the process.
so they understand what they're working with.
Right, because that way it's no surprises.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything you said. What I noticed that a lot of the younger buyers are looking for, though, is they are looking to be their parents. They are looking to buy the McMansion that their parents have worked 40, 50 years for their entire life to finally be able to own and provide to them.
Excellent.
And
That
they
is a
want to
great
come right out the door and have that same type of lifestyle instead of gradually building into it. That's the whole joy about real estate. Instead of renting where you don't build any equity and you have nothing when you're done, starting out with a decent starter house.
Right.
Doesn't have to be glamorous. It just has to serve a purpose. It has to provide you
Well,
shelter.
you're building your portfolio.
Exactly.
They
And
don't
then
get
you
that.
move up in stages to the next
Correct.
house and the next house and the next house. But the majority of the younger generation, unfortunately, they want that lifestyle that their parents have, again, worked their entire lives to provide to them. I remind my kids all the time. I'm like, they're like, oh, Dad, you do great. You do this, you do that. I'm like, hon, if you remember growing up, we weren't always like that. I mean, we were very frivolous. We had to move in stages to get to where we are. And thank God, I'm very fortunate. We're good. But again, it was hard work. It wasn't someone who just didn't come over and hand it to you. And
You weren't born on third base.
exactly. And I think that this generation kind of needs to learn that
Yes.
to
The grind.
grow into
They have to
that.
grind.
Yeah.
So
Get to-
true.
But real estate is, I mean, from those stages, starting out very, meek and
Modest.
Yeah, modest. It is the greatest transfer and building of wealth
Yep.
in this country.
No question.
No question. No question.
doubt.
Zero.
The history of the
Yep.
country.
In the history of the
Yep.
country, and now there's $20 trillion in equity.
Yep.
So that's another big boom. When the baby boomers, start getting older and stuff like that, that equity is going to be forced into the economy because those assets are going to be sold. So, Joe, your greatest advice?
Well, and they somewhat stole a little bit of my thunder, but I agree entirely with what was said. And the one word that comes immediately to mind to buyers, be reasonable.
Yeah.
With whatever you're doing, be reasonable. If I had to have a second, I would say have faith. Have faith in the team of people you put into place. Have faith in your realtor. Have faith in your mortgage guy. Have faith in your attorney. Make sure you have the right people. Because I talk to so many
That's
people.
so important, by the way. Not to interrupt you, but a client who doesn't listen to their realtor as to a referral of who they should use is making a monumental mistake. And I don't care if it's title, lender,
you're exactly
or attorney.
right.
That realtor's had success in that marketplace getting their deals closed.
Obviously.
Because of that process. Why bucket?
You know what I always tell clients? It's funny you say that because
There's power in referral.
And I've spoken, of course, to tens of thousands of clients over the years. What I always tell them is exactly that. Listen, it was like, oh, my aunt has her divorce attorney. And she says he's a great guy. And listen, you can use whomever you want. That's up to you. I don't spend anybody's money. This is what I do. This is how I do it. This is what I've done. You want to use those people, knock yourself out. But I always say, make sure whoever you select, if it isn't me, that really understands and knows real estate.
Right.
And doesn't just dabble in it
Yeah.
because it can really hurt you.
Yes.
And I always say to them this, and Michelle was my office manager, hears me all the time say this to clients. Say, look, if you have a heart problem, would you go to a podiatrist? He's a doctor, right? But it's probably not a good idea. It's probably a good idea if you call a cardiologist because he deals with this every day. So I'm your guy if you want to do that. If you know, in effect, if you know better, because, and you're right, it's always to me inconceivable how people can have, and the realtors control much of what goes out in referrals because you're in the first position and you're in a position of trust with them. So right, wrong, or indifferent, they trust you. Whether it's earned or not, and most times, and again, if you're a successful realtor, as you said before, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't listen to your realtor and say, hey, use this guy or give this guy a call at least. Here's 2 people. To me, I don't understand it. Or people who are penny wise, as we said before, and pound foolish. Who, you know, that guy's going to do it for $200 less. Vaya con Dios. Do whatever.
Do everyone.
And listen, that's,
You get what you pay for.
you get what, and that's what I always say too. You know what? And you've heard me say this. I think in the
I've
office on the phone with clients. I said, "Listen, what kind of car do you drive?" You know, and they'll say, you know, such and such. And I said, "Do you think it'd be nice to drive a Mercedes?" "Oh yeah. That costs more. You know that? There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It's a better car than what you're driving. No offense, but
That's what you're paying for.
that's what you're paying for." And I always say to people, I don't want to prolong this, but I always say to people, what you're really doing is you're not paying me to prepare documents. A monkey can do that. Okay? And let's be honest. You're not paying me to prepare documents or to shove this paper to the other attorney or to the title company. You're paying me for my 41 years of what I know.
Experience.
And that's there to protect you. I may catch or see something that the guy who's out 10 years, not to knock him, may not. But
No, it's interesting. I was just thinking about it. We have probably over 100 years experience sitting at this table. And a client coming in for their first time. Why would they mess around with that?
why would they?
Yeah.
Indeed.
And I hope you people understand that that's a
Yeah.
huge deal. Don't mess around
Yeah.
with the system that has been tested time and time again to get to the finish line in a smooth and secure manner. So one of the things that we are going to be hosting as ClosePoint USA on February 25th is a webinar on the new laws that are going to impact real estate starting March 1st. It's called FinCEN. And what's happening is the federal government, through the Financial Crimes Bureau, is requiring certain reportings to be done. And it's all done online through their BSE website. And essentially, if you're an entity purchasing property, LLC, corporation, trust, and you're using cash, private money, hard money loans, these are transactions that must be reported to FinCEN. And you have to get a receipt. And the reporting affects both buyer and seller. The documentation is extensive. There's like 9 pages for a buyer and 6 pages for a seller that have to be complete of information. And they want to know all this information, and so they push it up so they can evaluate to see if there's a money laundering scam going on.
Well, in a way, it's a good thing.
It's a
On
good thing,
another
but
way,
good Americans get hurt by it. That's
Yeah.
my thing.
Yeah.
What
That's the
the
thing.
purpose of it is to get to the
Yes.
individuals behind the
Yeah.
entities.
But
That's
the
Yeah.
cost,
Yeah.
now you got to hire companies to work with the buyer
Yeah.
to file these things, and the buyer's paying $300
yeah,
to get this done. So now their closing costs are going to go up
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
do
they're
these
gonna-
things. But they're paying cash. They're typically investors that are in that world. So, but one of the interesting caveats about the reporting, if you have an individual that owns a property and they're transferring it to their LLC, that's a reportable event now. Even though it's a dollar consideration, there's a transfer that occurred for a cash. That has to be reported to
Right.
FinCEN. So
That's
there's
what's causing a lot of
it's
consternation.
a lot of consternation because people don't listen. You pay your taxes, you file your taxes. And all that. I think it's intrusive. I got to be honest with
Yeah,
you. I've read the documents. There's a lot of.
No, it is intrusive, but I think it's intended to be.
I think there's 109 different lines of information that has to be inputted for a buyer. So it's going to impact. So the long and short of it is, if you're an entity buying, and you're using cash, hard money, private lender, seller take back mortgage, any one of those things, you're not closing until you file. Because the fine, it's on us, the closing agent. It's $100,000 per incident.
Oh, wow.
So they're not messing around.
Oh, wow.
They're
They
not
want all
messing
these
around.
transactions reported.
They want them all reported. So that's, I think people need to understand that's happening. So on February 25th, we've got some speakers from Stewart Title who have been on the forefront of crafting the legislation when they go and they lobby, DC to make these changes. I have them coming on February 25th for a webinar. So you guys should get an invitation any day soon so they can really go into why this is happening and all the little nuances that are going to take place with this. So
Yeah, I agree with checking on people that you don't know where the money is, on those people. But I don't agree on all the fines to you
it's
because,
they made it steep.
and I see people that have cash under the bed and that kind
Is
of
that
cash.
right?
And it's like, how the heck you can have that money?
You can't use it.
And then they have it in the safety boxes. And it's like, to buy a house.
But now they got to document it.
So now they have to document it.
Yes.
I work with a lot of foreigners. And some foreigners are different in the way they think. So,
But if they're buying as an individual and not in an LLC
Doesn't
or
apply.
trust,
yeah, but they
they're
switch
exempt.
it.
They're exempt.
Yeah, they switch it. When they put it in, like they buy it, and then they switch it to an LLC.
No,
and
but
now they're
that-
going to
that will
get,
create-
that's going to trigger
The
that.
event.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I just want to give everybody.
Kind of deal
Yeah,
with that
thank
now
you.
with bank statements, to be honest with you, to a degree. I mean, how many times have you had a buyer tell you it's none of your business where the money came from that
Yeah.
they deposited?
Yeah.
$10,000 or $11,000.
So you're sourcing it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you still have to source
Yeah.
the funds, and I think a lot of people miss that, and they actually get angry with us. Well,
Can you imagine
there's
now?
a lot of
Can you
pushback.
imagine
So,
now what I'm going to deal with?
Chris, you have my sympathies, buddy.
I know. I was going to say that. Oh,
Crazy. So I want to thank you guys very much for this.
Thank you for having me.
This
thank
was
you.
awesome.
Pleasure.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
us.
It's an
Great
honor to be
perspective.
here.
Yeah, it was just a great perspective from everybody, and we got to do this again. Maybe next year we do a look back of what we predicted.
Looking forward to it.
All right,
Yeah,
I'll hold
that'd
you
be
guys to it. All right, cool.
That'd be awesome.
Well, thank you
Very
very
nice.
much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
All right,
you.
good deal.